I was at a friend's house, just hanging out, when my friend's mom suddenly came over where we were talking and started asking me about Dungeons & Dragons. Apparently, her brothers played it, and her husband or something tried it once and couldn't tell her what it was, so she was curious. I started telling her about the game and what you do. Then she starts talking in a serious tone. Not a good sign. She tells me that her schizophrenic brothers apparently played D&D, and they were now doing witchcraft. She listed tarot card readings as one thing they did. And one thought he was like the Queen of Iceland or something. I don't blame him for wanting that. Iceland's freaking gorgeous, man. Have you been there? Seriously, only thing this arrow ace has ever fallen in love with is Iceland. Anyway, this mom was kind of judging me, saying things like, oh, witchcraft isn't real for you now, but it will be, and suggested that maybe only adults who played D&D started doing witchcraft and were schizophrenic. I obviously tried to tell her this isn't true, and gave her the example of my dungeon master who is 28 and not into witchcraft or schizophrenic. I had to tell her, no, I don't think I am my characters, and I'm not trying to become any of them. For multiple reasons, I'm sure. It worked! I'm here! Who are you? Oh my god, I have wanted to meet you for so long. You're my D&D character. What? It's a long story, but I've come here to finally meet you. God, I wish that we could swap places. I really wish I could live your life. Why? Why would you want that? I mean, you're so strong. You have access to magic, and you live in a world of magic and adventure. My parents were murdered violently in front of me when I was just a child. I live with light. You also don't have plumbing. You also don't have, like, electricity or... Why would you want to... Wait, what's electricity and plumbing? Oh, yeah, you'll figure it out soon. Oh, you're probably right. I'm really sorry about everything that happened with your parents. Well, because, like, I made that happen. I, like, wrote... You did what? Yeah, sorry. I will seek my revenge, no matter the cost. She eventually backed off, but that whole experience left me creeped out and not wanting to go back to that friend's house. I wasn't even close with that family in the first place. This was only my second time being at their house, and she dumped a bunch of personal family drama on me. There was more weird stuff she said, but I'm not going to talk about it here because it's not D&D related. I mean, the good person in me congratulates you on your restraint, but the gossip girl in me is begging for all of it. You know, even if the Satanic Panic thinks we all want to be our characters, I am curious, if you were to suddenly find yourself in your character's place, how screwed are you? I want to know. Greetings. I'm a long-time viewer, first-time submitter, and this is a little excerpt from a campaign I play in that probably deserves its own full story sometime. For this tale, we take to the Sea of Swords to do battle with the Sahugin. They were upon us without warning, wood groaned and splintered as two giant sharks rammed into our party's chattering galleon. And in the chaos, 8 Sahugin warriors leapt from the water surface onto the deck and snarled at our helpless crew. The monk barbarian and my fighter rogue ranger multiclass. Bro, what are you? The Mandalorian? Think about it. Just think about it. It makes sense. My Mandalorian was practicing martial arts on the deck, exchanging glances. We both knew it was time to kick ass, and kick ass we did. For 5 straight hours. I am not exaggerating, lying, or catastrophizing when I say this was the worst combat I have ever experienced in Dungeons & Dragons to date. On the cramped deck of a ship no one cared about in the middle of a storm where lightning had a 5% chance to strike us every round, but managed to hit us 4 times in a 6-round combat just when we started succeeding. Feel like it should be changed to something like this. Yeah, that's fair. We were slugging it out with 8 of the exact same dude, too. Most of the crew were slaughtered in the first round of combat because the Dungeon Master insisted upon using commoner stats for everybody, despite them being accomplished thieves from Baldur's Gate. The Sharkmen had a high armor class and health pool, and we had to wait anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour just to have our turn. But there was more danger to us than just these fishy beings. As their forces were slowly tired and worn down, we heard a strange noise from the bottom of our boat. Out came one of the crew members with a sinister glow about his eyes, holding a dagger, which he slashed at the nearest party member. It was obvious he was possessed, but like, by what? Why now of all times? Could it be that this man was in league with the antagonist of our campaign? Or was he an unwitting pawn in their deadly game? Risking her life, and on 1 hit point, our bard rushed into the fray and cast Greater Restoration on him, hoping to disrupt the possession. She was now surrounded by 3 angry Sahugin, and any attack against her would almost certainly be instantly fatal on account of how low her max HP was. But our bard was loyal and kind, the sort of person who risks her life for the innocent, and she was gonna save this man even if she perished. The Great Restoration, it did nothing. According to the Dungeon Master, the possession broke for a microsecond before reactivating. I know you're still in there. No one is beyond salvation. Now please, let me aid you. What? DM, hey! Why didn't that work? Well, you see, on page 175 of the Monster Manual, it does say that you can actually become immune to a spell for a single millisecond, which is enough to create total immunity to a spell. It doesn't actually say that though, but if you rearrange the letters of the words, then it kind of like... You just don't want the spell to work, do you? Well, I mean, I worked really hard on this encounter. Oh, and that crew member was struck by lightning on an unlucky roll at the top of the round, reducing his body to lifeless char. When the fight concluded, we learned that this possessed crewmate was some kind of sleeper agent sent to kill us. And although we all quietly wondered why he hadn't just attacked us when we were sleeping the many nights prior, we all dejectedly filed out of the DM's home and resolved to send a long message in the group chat later. On the plus side, I accidentally dropped my phone down a storm drain as I was leaving the session, so I had to pull up the gate and trudge down the muddy tunnel beneath the street for a bit, which was immediately more engaging and fun than anything I experienced in the last 5 hours. There were truly dungeons everywhere, with those with eyes to see. P.S. Did you have to look up how to pronounce Sahu again? Just check. Okay, wait, I pronounced it right?
It's Sagwin. That's how I pronounce it. Sagwin.
It's like close-ish to what I said. Anyway, this is the definition of bad encounter design. First and foremost, long combat does not mean good combat. In fact, it usually means bad combat, at least 90% of the time. I get sweaty and nervous when a combat goes over like an hour and a half. Waiting an hour for your turn is unacceptable. This DM brushes against good ideas, like tight, compact spaces that force your party to adapt, or arena effects that change the dynamic of combat. Most notably though, it's not just design, it's also story-wise. The party want to save these crew members, but the DM purposely makes it almost impossible by having them be such low hit point commoners, and by actively screwing them over with random possessions and literal lightning strikes from the gods. It's almost good, but there's just something so fundamentally wrong. It's like AI-generated D&D game balance. Gross. I'm a bit new to your videos, but I've been enjoying them as background noise. A story I heard from you recently reminded me of a D&D campaign I was in that ended horribly. It happened when I was in 8th grade. Oh my god, you freaking... Oh! Have any childhood games went well? They all seem to just end up here. I got into D&D the previous year because of my school's D&D elective. Along with me, my friends got into it as well. In 8th grade, D&D elective came back, and it went well. I got more into the game, and so did my other friends, and so did our problem guy. I'll call him Greg. Greg was a year younger than me. I didn't consider him a friend, as he was kind of annoying. I knew Greg as the murder hobo. He loved combat, hated roleplay, unless he was given the chance to, like, murder someone. Anyways, after D&D elective ended, Greg decided to start his own campaign, which you didn't join, right? Because joining the annoying guy's campaign would be, that'd be crazy, wouldn't it?
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
At first, he asked me to DM. How is that worse? And I said yes. I've always been into writing fantasy, so I figured writing a campaign was going to be easy. I homebrewed an entire world, and then Greg decided to tell me he was going to DM instead. I was okay with that, really, because I think this is a reasonable reaction. I did all that work! I'm all for a descriptive backstory, so I gave my character a long and in-depth backstory. Important note, my character is male. Upon reading it, Greg told me it was too long and that he wasn't planning on having so much roleplay in his campaign. He basically said the backstory was worthless and that he was not going to implement our character's backstories at all. My first red flag should have been that there was no session 0. You're kids, I'll excuse it. But it was my second campaign, so I didn't really care. The second red flag was that I was the only girl in the campaign. But I didn't care, as I was into D&D, and one of my close friends was into it too, and I was friends with 2 of the other players. I want to take this moment to give a toast to all the individual women who play as the only individual women in literally all of my games. Love you, ladies. Thanks for joining me. The players are as follows. My close friend, a barbarian, friend 1, a bard, friend 2, a monk, and I'll refer to the other players as just their classes. Session 1 starts with me getting to Greg's house. I was the second one there, and we were waiting for Barbarian to arrive, as Bard wasn't able to come. Monk and Greg are close friends, so when we got there, they were fooling around. When Barbarian got there, I thought we were going to start playing, but instead, Greg sprints upstairs to his room and comes back with some manga. He flips to a page, starts showing Barbarian and Monk, and then me. The page shows a woman in very little clothing with exaggerated chest proportions. Wonderful. Greg asked me what I thought about it, and I just gave him a little nod. We start playing. Greg sets the scene of us sitting in a wagon while heading to the city. I start introducing myself to the party, as I really like roleplay, but Greg just sends us straight into battle with a giant spider. My character has arachnophobia, I do as well, so I say that my character stays on the wagon. Greg rolls his eyes, but says nothing, but I can tell he was really pissed off. We get to the town and we're immediately sent on a quest to a dungeon. The dungeon wasn't too difficult until we got to the end. The final battle was a whole dragon. Mind you, the party is level 1. We fight the dragon and the session ends. Did you win? Did you kill the dragon? What kind of dragon was it? Was it frickin' Rhaegal from Game of Thrones Season 8? Yeah, because that guy went down like a frickin' I'm never gonna live that down. Session 2 goes almost the exact same way, except Bard was there. Okay, I guess they did kill it. Bard is actually a really funny and cool guy, and I was glad he was there. Session 2 was also only combat with very little roleplay. The bad part is that Barbarian decided to ditch the campaign. Session 3 is where things really went downhill. Greg has a massage chair, and while we were taking a break, he sat on it and began pretending he was using a vibrator. I looked away and started drawing my character on my iPad. A few moments later, Greg hovers over to me and asks, "Why is she so flat? Aren't women supposed to have boobs?" And I respond with, "My character is a man." Greg is surprised and says, "Women shouldn't play male characters in D&D. They're just going to make them gay!" Bro, if I was a woman and met Greg, I'd instantly become a lesbian too, not gonna lie. Suffice to say, I quit the campaign after that. I still had to go to school with him though, but it wasn't as bad. After quitting that campaign, one of my other friends, who was in the elective, asked if I would be willing to DM a campaign. I agreed, and decided to use the homebrew world I made for Greg's campaign for this one. We had Session 0, and everyone made their characters. We're all very new to D&D, and it's fun. Luckily, I didn't lose my love for the game because of what happened with Greg. Based on that ending, it seems you're still in 8th grade, which is very impressive considering your writing is stronger than most grown-ass adults who submit to this email, so take that how you will. In any case, yeah, Greg is not exactly what I'd call an ideal dungeon master. Though you are both young, you have room for character development. Greg can absolutely get better. He can improve and grow up. However, you don't need to be there for that. You don't need to tolerate this guy's immaturity because he's young. You're allowed to have standards, and those standards can include basic decency. Now, aside from the strange comments and the massage chair, Greg's campaign of combat only is fine. I run a very combat-heavy campaign for my home game and switch over to a very roleplay-heavy focus for any of my streams. Both are a lot of fun, and both have their value for different groups. But that's why you have a Session 0, to talk about it before the game. Besides, it's a good way to get someone's vibe before even playing. People like Greg, they lack the subtlety for deception. Hey, crispy boy. My friends have 1,000 variations of my name. Crispin, Crisper, Cribby. That one's not one of them. Love the content, especially when I'm walking to and from work in the middle of summer. I hate summer. I want to preface this by saying that neither the Dungeon Master or a new player are at fault here. In fact, I wouldn't blame you for thinking I was the problem here, since I did handle this pretty poorly in my opinion. The story does have a happy ending to it, and I did apologize to the party for this. I do get a bit rambly, so I included a TLDR at the end. So my party recently got a new player who unfortunately couldn't play for most of the sessions until the end because we had to get to a point where we could introduce them. We were exploring some ghost pirate caves when all of a sudden a giant mech attacked us out of nowhere. Okay, I feel like I'm getting kind of mixed messages here. Like, are you rolling initiative against like these kind of artificer mechs? Or like this kind of artificer mech? Like, the difference is kind of important. Anyway, the driver behind this mech was our artificer. Started going off about how we killed their family. We didn't kill any families. Trying to talk sense into it became useless as they refused to listen to reason. Now this mech had 6 different weapons, all of them averaging around 10 to 20 damage at level 6. Almost all of us had like 40 HP max. This fight was after we had already fought 5 banshees, so we were pretty roughed up by the time the fight started. Here, I was thinking that the DM was going to use like a Deus Ex Machina to get us out of the fight, such as the mech malfunctioning or a rock falling on its armor leg, but no, it just nearly kills our paladin, who only survived thanks to my ranger's Drake using the help action on the paladin's death saving throws. We have a rule where a companion can do that on a bonus action. Anyway, to add to the insane damage this mech was doing, I have notorious history in my group for getting bad rolls at the worst possible times. Dude, my luck is so bad. It makes Will Wheaton's luck look like he constantly rolls nat 20s instead of nat 1s. It's so bad that the Dungeon Master literally gave me a magic item that gives me the Divination's Wizard's Portent ability, and it doesn't even matter if I'm playing D&D or not. It applies to video games too. Borderlands 2? Nah, that game will make me grind for weeks for a decent legendary weapon. Mario Party? I'll either roll super low next to a star with someone right behind me, get a minigame I suck at when stars are on the line, or I'll land on Bowser, who proceeds to steal all my stars or coins. As you can imagine, those 2 things pissed me off quite a lot during this fight. I'm with you, friend. My inventory of Destiny raid exotics is still woefully empty. Epson chat, please. After a while, I had the mindset of just kill me with your overpowered BS at this point. I vocalized it pretty heavily during the fight to the point where our paladin got tired of it and said, just give the DM a chance. I'm sure he's got something planned. I personally hate it when it feels like the DM is trying to screw you over on purpose, and this felt like one of those scripted boss sequences where you're supposed to lose. Eventually, the mech downs me, and due to an item the DM gave me in the first few sessions, the party is suddenly transported to the Feywild, and the item breaks. The session ends after the party meet Lord Behemat. The next session starts with us meeting a new member of our party without the mech this time, but we didn't recognize him because all of us have like stupid low intelligence. Thank you for joining us. Me and my party, we were devastated by a rogue gunslinger wearing a flannel shirt. He was an absolute maniac. He slew my brother right in front of me. We laughed as I cried over his corpse. He's a monster. But you'll help us hunt him down, right? Yeah, that guy sounds horrible. What a bad dude. We do still need to figure out his identity. There's no telling where he could be hiding. Yeah, where could he? We had fun poking fun at our artificer's personality because their character has the personality of every annoying Redditor. My chaotic neutral character especially loved doing that because they love to insult people. Our characters assumed our artificer was a dragonborn because our characters have a stupid low intelligence, and our artificer corrects us with, "No, I'm a kobold, stupid." Our bard also misheard them saying their homeland Eberron, which started a joke of us mispronouncing Eberron and annoying them. Eberberton? No, Eberron. Oh, I get it. Eckershon. No, it's... Never mind. Come on, guys. Of all the things to mispronounce, Eberron... That's so easy to pronounce. I would never mispronounce that. Anyway, that's the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. TLDR, I got mad at the DM for introducing what seemed like an overtuned fight meant to introduce our artificer to us, which brought down the mood of the group for the entire session. Yeah, those sort of impossible fights are just really hard to do right. I tried doing it during my D&D podcast, The 10th Tomb, and my party had a lot of feedback about that moment because it did feel contrived and impossible. It doesn't feel good when you get tossed into a moment where it doesn't feel like you can actually do anything. There has to be some kind of win condition. Like, for example, the win condition could be just running away. But if you're just waiting for the bad guy to beat the crap out of you, then it just doesn't feel good. In a video game, you can kind of get away with it because a scripted fight can last like a minute, but in D&D, it could last upwards of 40 minutes, and in that case, it just doesn't feel good for anyone involved. While I think you were correct in that this is a bit contrived, I do appreciate you apologizing for getting upset, because at the end of the day, this is a game. Getting overly upset is not necessary. Like, in the 10th Tomb, the cast wasn't yelling at me, they just gave me respectful critique. They weren't upset at all. That is always important, and even if you're not wrong, apologizing is a mature way to end conflict. I have had a lot of bad experiences over the decades, but this has to be the worst one because it struck so much more personal than anything I've experienced before. The group is full of adults, all 30 plus, a friend of my wife, a woman we'll call Clara, a friend of mine who we'll call Lou, and a friend of a friend who was suggested to me because he is a great role player, not a number cruncher, who couldn't really find a group recently. That's always a great sign. Anyway, that's the problem guy. We'll call them Phil. Finally, a close friend of the family, V. V was the main reason I run this weekly group right now because she has been through an incredibly terrible period lately. She lost her husband to a sudden cerebral hemorrhage and is still recovering from her failed self-offing attempt recently. We had a lot of concerns about her well-being, and we were making sure that she wasn't alone. It's been a long and hard period of trying to get her mood up even a little bit, but it was working out pretty well with role-playing games, as she seemed to be easily absorbed by them. Unfortunately, Phil's idea of role-playing quickly turned out to be a bit more personal than expected. He quickly flirted in-game with the two women, and was quickly told to knock it off. After a little bit of back and forth, he toned it down, but instead stuck to a comedic unreciprocated. God, oh my lord. I feel like the problem is just me. Okay, unreciprocated love towards Clara, which she thought was funny. It actually worked out okay for a few sessions, and the mood was pretty good. The dynamic was seeming to be working. That is, until one session 2 weeks ago, where during a short break, Lou asked why the kitchen door was locked. It's an old built-in lock that we don't use ourselves, but it came with the house. Phil had locked V in there, talking to her about stuff related to the game and such. Now, we're adults, and V acted like usual when they came out, with Phil seeming more pissed than before, so we figured it was Phil coming with a bad suggestion that V just shot down. Since she didn't seem too bothered, and her confirming she was fine, we just let it go. We just made it clear that the kitchen should not be locked under any circumstance. Then, we got to our last session. Phil was acting more flirty than usual, not just in-game either, and making even my wife, who wasn't even in the game, extremely uncomfortable. Lou tried to excuse his behavior as him having a bad day. And, you know, I've had bad days before. You know how I deal with it? I play video games. I clean occasionally. I sleep. Usually on the floor. You know what I don't do? This. Hey yo, you got nice boobs, wanna fuck? Being in a bad mood is not an excuse to be a creep. Especially with all the context, dude, come on. Look, we got him to comment until during a short break. My wife noticed Phil having locked the door to the kitchen again, trapping V in there. My wife only overheard him asking her why she was cold towards him, to which V gave him a cold, short, "I don't really like you," as a response, before she unlocked and left the kitchen herself, seemingly unfazed. My wife got pretty angry at Phil. The kitchen door can be locked, but it absolutely shouldn't be locked under those circumstances, as was made very clear previously. According to my wife, Phil's excuse was, "V keeps avoiding me. I want to make sure she'd properly respond to some questions I had." My wife didn't like that response. Unsurprisingly, she came back to me and made it pretty clear to me that she wants Phil out of the house. W wife. She sees a creep.
You look like a cut of meat.
And sees a problem to be dealt with. Immediately. Not having heard it myself, and truly hoping this was a misunderstanding, my wife and I brought it up as we were sitting back down at the table. Just for clarification, the intention was to know what happened, and if they had done anything more than just talk. My wife essentially wanted to know if he should leave, or if we needed to call the police. Instead of coming with any kind of excuse, Phil just got pissy. He turned to V with the most ridiculous sentence I have heard in a long time. If her husband is dead and she wants to die anyway, why is it such a big deal to ask if she wants to make another guy happy? Oh my god. That's the most evil crap I've ever read! Blue, being Phil's friend, didn't even say a word, as he just quietly slipped into the backyard to hide, not even going to pretend to defend Phil. V just instantly packed up her things and left, clearly pushed beyond her level of comfort, with my wife following her out the door. This left me and Clara, and we were crystal clear that Phil leaves right now and will not be coming back under any circumstances. Phil tried to argue very briefly, but quickly got the hint and packed up and left. I still don't know how Lou didn't know about any of this, but he seemed just surprised and baffled at this incredibly sensitive and borderline predatory behavior by Phil. Also, did he just go into the backyard and not leave? Is he still there? Dude, can you check on him? He might still be there. I made quick edits for clarity on any confusing parts and added placeholder names instead of letters, and yeah, up front, I did not handle this well. That's the main reason this infuriates me. I should have dealt with this much sooner. Yeah, I like your wife's approach more. And I will be honest, I empathize with the writer here because this is absolutely unhinged and insane. You don't expect someone to be acting like this, especially with someone so vulnerable, but guess what? People like this actively prey on people who are vulnerable. They seek them out, in fact. Look, we may play heroes in our tabletop games, but we are not always equipped to be heroes. That doesn't mean that we ignore when bad things are happening, especially like this. V is somebody who is going through a lot of emotions. Let me make this clear, tabletop games are not therapy, nor should they be used as therapy, but they can be a very helpful escape. That's why session zeros and safety stuff are so important. But Phil's not the kind of guy who's going to use any of those tools. Phil's not the kind of guy who will interact with the game in good faith, and Phil's not the kind of guy you want to keep around. Guys like this cannot be allowed to stay at your game table. They gotta go. I wouldn't blame V if she socked him right in the face. Like I said, some of the most evil crap I have ever read. Complacency with people like this leads to disaster. I'm not saying you need to get trigger happy, but a single word can really save you from disaster. Hey, that's a wrap. If you guys enjoyed, you'll probably enjoy a previous episode very similar about how guys can't play girls. It's linked in the cards. But before you go, please do leave a like on this video and subscribe to Crispy's Tavern so you don't miss any of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment turning the D&D players gay to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Hey, by the way, if you have your own horror stories, you can send them directly to us. There's an email down in the description down below. Send your stories our way for a chance to be featured in one of these videos. But hey, even if you don't have any stories, in essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.